Lexi, thank you so much for joining She Leads today. I am so excited to have you as a guest and just hear your story and share with others. So thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, Carly. Happy to be here.
Of course. So Lexi, you are the Chief Operating Officer at Gusto. And what Gusto is, it creates an integrated all-in-one platform for small to medium-sized businesses to manage their HR, payroll, and benefits. And even prior to Gusto, you worked at Google as a VP of programmatic sales and strategy globally. And even prior to that, you have experience at American Express in sales, marketing, and operations. So you've also been coined as one of the most powerful tech executives in Silicon Valley and the most influential woman in Bay Area business. So you can imagine I'm very excited to have you on the show. So Lexi, take me back now to a 22-year-old like myself, when you were just graduating from UVA, what did you have in mind for where you wanted to kind of take your career, and what did you know what you wanted to be, or kind of how were you navigating this career path?
Yeah, thank you, Carly. As I told you before we started, it's an honor in both ways since we love Carly and Stanford women's soccer especially. So thanks for having me. So 22, graduating from UVA, I would never in a million years have imagined that I was going to have a business career. So let's start there. And I did not, I was not nearly as planful as I think you might be being and just networking and talking to a lot of people about their careers. I had graduated with a focus on Latin American history, and I knew I ingrained early on, make a difference in the world if you're able to do that. And I loved Latin America, and I got an opportunity just, to be honest, kind of randomly to work for a female filmmaker as her assistant producer. And I made a connection with her on a personal level. And I would say my title would be assistant producer, but I actually was just kind of her bag person, did what she needed. But got to work on a film about adolescent prostitutes living in Nicaragua. And my main advice to anybody who is graduating school is it is such a journey. So don't try to plan for too much, because experiences, especially early on, will lead you to where you're meant to be in the universe. And for me, that path has been filming those young girls was not something that I felt like I could do. I think storytelling is an incredible, powerful way to make change, but I really wanted to change the outcome of where they were going to end up in life. And so that set me on a path that led to microfinance and a focus on small business owners, which we'll get to, I'm sure, later in the conversation. But by doing something that I wasn't necessarily amazing at, but was very passionate about, I started being able to connect more with what am I both passionate about and good at.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that's so valuable advice to kind of look at this where your experiences will teach you a lot. And it's not where you have to plan for what you want to be in 10 years, but it's rather what's right there for you now that you can take and learn from. Because I think everything you'll learn from. So I think that's really true. So now kind of going into tech and everything, how was that transition how was that transition for you? And like, did you have mentors guiding you and like telling you like this could be a great path for you to take? Or like, how did you know which is, okay, this is my intersection of passion and what I'm good at?
Yeah, I mean, I think that if I were to articulate my life as a book and its chapters, there was this whole, right after college, navigating with my heart. What was I passionate about? Okay, women and girls, and how could I make a difference in their lives? I tried filmmaking. I tried a stint in the Manhattan District Attorney's Sex Crimes Unit because I thought there was going to be potentially law was where I wanted to be. And then I ended up in microfinance, giving loans to people living in poverty to start their own businesses. All the through line of how and when can you have impact on changing the poverty cycle. I had a mentor, and mentor, I have a funny relationship with that word insofar as I had the CEO of this nonprofit called Acción, who probably does not remember my name or even having had this conversation. So advice comes in small packages and in unexpected ways. But he had seen some of my work and he had said, you're obviously really, you have a lot of passion and you have a lot of ability to connect with people who are difficult to connect with. You should marry that with hard skills. And I didn't know what that was, but he then elaborated and ended up being go to business school or go into the private sector and get more of a language of how to influence. So learn marketing, learn finance, learn a little bit more about leadership as an organizational behavioral model. Because Lexi, whether you want to stay in nonprofit or you want to do something else, you're ultimately going to have to figure out how you make requests and then how do you marshal resources, money, people in order to drive that impact. So up until that point, as I mentioned at the beginning of the call, business school, business was just not on my reflection. It wasn't something that I had considered doing. But I ended up at Harvard. They have this incredible program for public-private partnerships that was really interesting to me. And to not go too long on one question, I would say that I loved it. I just said, oh my gosh, I mean, there's this whole way to speak and to have impact that I didn't understand. But the nonprofit background was actually really, really important because I was used to how do you do things with a lot less resources than you ever have if you go to the private sector. But I went to American Express because I felt like I wanted to try what I had learned in business school by being in business, and did a rotational program, not unlike the one it sounds like you might be going into, which was, for talented folks coming out of business school who were going to spend 2 years doing a bit of investing and business development, and then you rolled out into one of the American Express business units. So I rolled out into the business unit that ended up being open from American Express, the small business division of American Express. And there I found, again, I'm in the small business sector and I'm seeing how finance impacts people's ability in the small business sense to fund their dreams. I ended up doing a lot of marketing and operations at Amex, and I was seeing we were advertising to find small business owners on this little website called Google. We were just increasingly spending a lot more money in Google and in AdWords, which is crazy. You laugh because, of course, now everybody advertises using Google and AdWords, but at that time, it was print, radio, and television. That's how you let people know that your product existed. And I became really fascinated about this company and then ended up having a friend who was working in the small business division, which Sheryl Sandberg was running at the time. And the company was growing, not unlike Gusto, where I am now, very quickly, faster than they could hire for. And so lucky for me that they needed people who knew how to lead teams and didn't know a lick about tech, because I really did not. I could barely use Gmail at the time. Yeah. And I would say this is where, if I had gone to business school and done the American Express thing because I needed to train my brain to learn something that didn't necessarily light up my heart, Google and now Gusto have been the place where I was able to integrate what I felt like, okay, I love leading teams. I love creating a vision. I love rallying a bunch of resources and moving towards that end goal, again, sort of like sports. And I loved organizing the world's information and keeping it accessible. Yeah. So that was sort of the head, heart, gut integration. And we can talk about the Gusto path later, because Gusto really was the first real startup. Google was 3,000 people, 4,000 people when I joined. So it felt much smaller than Amex, a 150-year-old company with 100,000 people, but not nearly as small as Gusto, which was about 150 people when I joined.
Yeah. So clearly you have this passion for helping these small business owners succeed. And that's obviously a core, that's Gusto essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to know, where did that passion stem from?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that it's probably deep in my blood of being my family immigrated from Ireland, third generation. So third generation, they were illegal immigrants. They came through Canada. And once upon a time, my grandfather was working on a printing press, or great-grandfather. And then he was in a union. He started his own company in Buffalo. And he really, from true nothing to creating a media company that unfortunately got sold in its fourth generation, but ultimately was, 4 generations is sort of defying all odds. So who knows if it's in the blood of, you support business owners, or you are a business owner. But I think it's just a feeling that when you infuse opportunity, capital, information in the U.S., there's 6 million businesses that run payroll that are less than 500 employees. 5.8 million have less than 100 employees, and they're responsible for 50% of the GDP and contain 50% of the labor market. So any support that you can give them is disproportionately impacting communities in our economy. So I like leveraged ways to have that kind of impact.
Yeah, that's amazing. And that passion, it's crazy how it's just kind of ingrained in you from such a long time ago with your family and everything. So I love that story. So now kind of going towards Gusto as a company it's so highly regarded and has been named as like the best place to work in SF. And so I want to know kind of your beginning at Gusto and what made you so attracted to it, the culture, and just building it up to be this great company.
Yeah. Well, you did an awesome intro on it for your listeners who are less familiar. So in ordinary times, and not in post-COVID, we're not in ordinary times. In ordinary times, Gusto's a people platform, and we use modern technology and a deep bench of experts who help small business owners pay, insure, and take care of their teams. So just to give you a sense, and now this is relevant for COVID, is we have the small business sector being so hit by the global health pandemic, leads to a shutdown, leads to no more commerce in certain sectors, no foot traffic, small businesses going out of business or laying employees off in droves. And the government has stepped in, and pending Trump signing something today, will have put $600 billion towards something called the Payroll Protection Plan, which means they're trying to find ways to pay business owners to keep their employees on payroll. And they're doing this through what's called a loan, but effectively it's a government-backed grant. So what's interesting here is Gusto, when I joined, was called Zen Payroll. We were just a small app that enabled people to get paid in basically 7 minutes or less. And the companies we were competing against at the time were kind of ADP, Paychex, really old companies that were not built in the cloud, optimized for mobile. And so Gusto really reinvented the way that you could do full service payroll, with meaning your taxes get paid. All you have to do, company, is sign up, put your employees in, put their bank account information, and we get them paid whenever you want. Now, fast forward, what I saw with the founders, the founders all went to Stanford and met there. And they have always had this vision, create a world where work empowers better lives. And they are first and second generation immigrants who just could have done anything, but really wanted to solve a problem. And they saw through their own families running their own businesses, either in the US or Israel or elsewhere, they saw payroll as the fountainhead of the economy. And if we could solve for a payroll solution in a really cool integrated way, we could build other services that people need, like equitable health insurance and access to retirement and college savings. And so that's what we've been doing. And we changed the name to Gusto to capture the spirit with which small business owners with Gusto start their businesses. It ends up being a vessel for this much longer term mission that now, we've grown. Everything's 10x. Pre-COVID was 10 or more X. And now, we have to work hard to help our sector so that they can stay on Gusto. But I just felt like there was really deep connection with the founders on a values and mission level. And they were looking for a business partner who could help them move from 10,000 customers to penetrating all small businesses in the U.S. And I was excited about that challenge.
Yeah, I love it. And I think one thing about Gusto particularly is that passion is very transparent. Like, it comes through the work and the effort and everything that comes for these companies. So I think that's very valuable. And as you said, the mission alignment, values alignment, I think that was really important. So I'm wondering, I know you have experience and you were actually the Chief Customer Experience Officer before being the COO. So I'm wondering, kind of, what are some key points that everyone who in customer experience needs to follow? And kind of following that, I want to know, because customer experience is putting the customer at the center and building these relationships and retaining them. So I'm wondering, how do you scale that so effectively?
Okay, so let me answer that latter question on customer experience. And then I think there's a pre-question, but I'm going to answer the last one.
Yeah, sorry, I'm excited.
I think that, no, they were both good, but I think that the latter one of how do you scale uncommonly excellent service well is very hard. And I actually think it is an underappreciated, really critical part of any business, but particularly technology business, that is equal in importance to engineering and software development. And I'll tell you why. For Gusto, so ideally you could, it would be so easy and fast and you'd never have an issue, so you never need to call us or contact customer service, but we are running payroll and health insurance in large part. We have lots of other services. And think about two of the most complicated industries in the world. What would come to mind? You'd probably say, well, taxes are pretty complicated and health insurance is pretty complicated. So in our software, but also our human service, we're trying to abstract that complexity so that our small business owners feel that this gives them total peace of mind, enables them to create these great communities, and allows them to save for a better future. So I think how we instrument and programmatically set up the technology and the human service to be able to meet those expectations while we have so many unpredictable variables, how the government responds, how health insurance carriers respond, and also the variability of when and how customers need support. What are they calling about? When do they call, and how do they contact us? So I would describe in a nutshell, there's another Harvard GSB grad named Enoch Shee, who's now running customer experience and is brilliant on this. He could be another guest for you to think about. But effectively, you need to decide, one, is customer service really core to who you are? For us, Gusto, from the beginning, has had this as part of our mission. It's not a nice to have, it is a must have. Yeah. And it's not only for altruistic purposes. Saying you're good to customers is a nice talking point, but if we're growing in the small business sector, we need to drive growth cost effectively. And so if you, Carly, use this for a business you start and have a great experience and you recommend it to 4 friends, and I'm not advertising to find those 4 friends, that is a much more effective way to drive viral organic growth, or sorry, it's virality rather than a network effect. But so this has been core for multiple reasons, and I'd say then the quick and dirty is you have to define what jobs need to be done in order to provide the service you've articulated you want to provide. And when I say jobs to be done, it means on a discrete level. So to be a broker of health insurance, there's 96 things that need to be done. Mm-hmm. How much of that is then, second part is, how are you going to get those jobs done? Is your technology going to do it, or are humans going to do it? For anything that humans are going to do, third part is fit for purpose talent strategy. Mm-hmm. So who do I need to hire? Where are they? And how do I set those people up for success in order to complete those jobs? And that, I think, is really fun because, for technology companies, we have neuroscientists from great colleges working on different parts of our customer service operation. And why is that interesting? Well, you get the experience of talking to customers and health insurance carriers every day. Mm-hmm. So right now, our customer experience reps are talking to 15 small businesses a day. They're obviously hearing some pretty nightmare stories about what these customers are going through. But in addition to supporting those folks, their feedback goes into our product development roadmap, and then we instrument and develop our product based in part on what they're finding in their service. Yeah. So just like Google circa 2007 and Gusto circa now, we have lots of, ineffective and inefficient processes, but by hiring really smart and agile thinkers who we hire for empathy, energy, and intellect, we're able to utilize all their amazing brain power, not just to service the customer, but to make the technology and service experience better.
Yeah, that's great. I think it's so important, and just like putting the customer as the center, I think that's definitely telling of the company and the culture. So speaking of culture and kind of being a COO, I'm interested what your role entails and what are some 3 attributes that every successful CEO like yourself should have?
So CEOs, they're always different. There's no one job description. At Gusto, it practically entails I empower our marketing, sales, customer experience, business technology, and a strategy team. So this is, it's all business-facing teams. I don't empower our technology teams, products and engineers, our people team, which does all of our HR services or finance. And what we collectively, my team and I, are responsible for are how do we drive cost-effective growth, extraordinary service that does scale as we want it to, and how do we create and maintain a values-based community that has really high standards but a deep respect for people from a variety of backgrounds, because we're a big believer that difference creates greatness, and we want to embody that always. So that's, those are the things that we collectively are responsible for, that I hold myself responsible for. That's on my report card, let's say. And what do I think are the attributes? I think the attributes are, for me, they're not different than what most business leaders of any kind have to do, which is how do you drive the business? How do you build representative and inclusive teams? And how do you sort of model self-awareness and what I would say is Gusto values, which means you're humble and you're learning at all times, because there's just no way in technology, and certainly right now, that you can know the answer, and there's not really a lot of right answers in business, but you do have to be able to listen to a lot of input, synthesize a lot of feedback, and then say, okay, I've heard that. Now here's the plan. Here's how we're going to measure success. Here's I'm first to do that. And here's how we're going to check in along the way.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's core to Gusto is its culture and that those values. So I'm wondering, what do you look for? How can you tell that they embody those values?
So Gusto, and this is credit far before I got there, has always hired for values, motivation, and alignment. So Gusto has core values that include but aren't limited to ownership mentality, thinking for the long term, being transparent, and I'll get back to how we interview for those things in particular. But then the motivation to change is the one constant. That's what we tell everybody. That's the only thing I can guarantee you about Gusto, that whatever your job is when you're interviewing, it's probably going to be different when you get here. It'll probably be different 6 months later. And so if you're a person who likes security and linear path, that is, startups in general are not the right place. Definitely. How we interview for values, you get nominated to be a values and motivation interviewer. It's a real honor. You are at Gusto and you're embodying these things yourself. Yeah. And then we train people on how to interview and how to listen for things that would show that, for example, you're comfortable with change. That you have a service orientation by nature, that you have made decisions in your life that evidence you don't take shortcuts, because there really are none, and that you're intellectually curious, because again, there's no learning and development plan for what we're doing here. If you've never if an app hasn't been created that creates this world where work really embodies better life, where we can foster humanity at work, like that thing doesn't exist. Yeah. So Gusto's creating it. So we need everybody to be part of that creation. And that's, a set of questions which I can't tell you on this podcast, because hopefully you're going to apply, Carly, is just to see if that comes naturally, Yeah. It can't be scripted, If I ask you, hey, what's your favorite book? And that's a stumper. Well, that's probably, I don't know if you're that curious.
Yeah, definitely. No, it's very interesting. So, okay, so now I'm kind of wondering, you are a mother of 2 beautiful daughters and who are also soccer fans, so I already love them. But I'm wondering, how is that balance being a mother of 2 young daughters, also a wife, and a successful tech leader? Like, is that a difficult balance to navigate? Has it changed over the years? And just, walk me through that.
No, I don't know what you're talking about. Super easy, especially now that the schools are closed and we're all living together. Yeah. I think that I like to talk about integration versus balance. And I think the best sort of learning I've had this is that you design your life. There's a good book called Essentialism, which I really like, which says, if you had to say my one true purpose in life in a sentence, what would it be? And that could change, by the way. It's a very high stakes question, but what is it now? And then what are the vital few important things that are important to you for this period of time? So I would say for many people, it's good to plan in 3 months or 4 months increments, not for a year, not for 3 years. And I say especially now just because so much is changing in the world. Yeah. So over the next 3 months, what is really important to you? And then think of your life as if it's a plate. And what is going on that plate? But it can't be 25 thin slices. It's 3 or 4 things, and you write them down and you share those with your tribe. If you're married, obviously your partner is going to be part of that, but it could be, if you're single, your friends, your family, the people that are important for you, who one should be able to give you advice on, is that realistic, Carly? Like, are you really going to go from your entire life playing soccer to now, I don't know what the total inverse would be, but
right.
Who could just speak truth to you of, I know that's what you aspire to, but is that really realistic? And you get to this, and what comes is, it can't just be, oh, I'm going to work and I'm going to exercise and I'm going to stay healthy. It needs to be more specific, than that. So for me right now, it is, we will be the best leader for small businesses on anything having to do with COVID and the recession. So that is priority number one.
Yeah.
And it's actually taking up probably about 2/4, 1/2 of what I have.
Okay.
Second is, I will not make my kids stupid, meaning they're not in school.
Right.
My husband and I need to figure out a plan to bolster, this whole crazy online learning. Yeah. And then the third is, I want to stay deeply connected to my friends and my family who are experiencing lots of different things. Yeah. So what does this mean? This means that I'm not doing some nonprofit work. I'm deprioritizing some work as it relates to growing Gusto as quickly as we had been in support of serving the sector and serving our customers. There's a bunch of trade-offs within that are then reflected. Like, everything for me is, my friends would joke, is on some sort of Google document. Like, if you can doc it, you can manage it.
Yeah.
And so I say, the following things are not getting my attention for the next 3 months, and then we revisit it. My husband and I revisit it, or try to, every 3 months or so. That helps a lot take the pressure off this, semblance or image of, there's this perfect balance. I am a shitty mom and a shitty spouse at some times. I really am, and that's okay. That's okay, because the kids are going to be just fine. They have a lot of people who love them, and they know at the core, I love them. But if I'm working, for 12 hours a day during an economic crisis and global pandemic, they also get that, So, and I think sometimes we underestimate what kids and friends and family understand if you let them in on what you're facing, and you just say, you know what, I know I'm not the best sister right now, or daughter, or friend, because I'm really gunning it for this particular goal. And I want you to know I love you, and I don't want you to stop talking to me. And people get that. It's just when we have this ideal of ourselves that we have to be perfect. It has to be all so tight and fixed. And it's just way messier than that.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think I'm gonna use that. I'm gonna make my plate today and see what I'm prioritizing. But I think that's a really valuable lesson to learn, and just like moving forward in your career and in life. So I'm just curious, before we go on to the fun questions, I am curious, is this something that you do write down on Google Docs and you kind of revisit yourself, or is it something you kind of have in your head and you just know, or how do you visualize it?
Yes, I write it down. I will pull it up for you so you can I'll tell you exactly what it says. And this, I had a coach who helped with this, who suggested it. So it's called the Reese Simplicity and Budget meeting document. Budget. Yeah, Reese Family Meeting. Simplify and Budget. That's what it's called. So we have a family meeting, Corby and I. We try to do it every 3 months. We try to do it as a day date after we exercise. Because if you try to talk about this stuff at night, you usually get in a fight about it, which is not good, and you're just too tired.
Yeah.
And so in that, we have this set of questions, which is, in this season, what are we emphasizing? So my husband says, what does he feel passionate about? If he could do one thing in the next set of time, what would he do? And what is the most important thing we should be doing as a family with our time and resources now? So he answers those questions. I answer those questions. Based on that, the second category is, in this season, what are we de-emphasizing? So to get all of that done, what is not getting done? And I'll give you a good practical example of this, but just to finish the section since you're writing it down. And then we give each other feedback, like what's working right now for you, and then what needs attention. And in this, we may give each other feedback, which sounds kind of cheesy, but it actually, in with roommates and colleagues and what have you, I think things take on meaning if you don't have an outlet for them. Yeah. So this is just a nice way that we know we're going to address, why don't you make the bed neatly in the morning? I don't understand, because I like a neat house. Things like that, but or more significant things. Yeah. And then we say any requests, we check in on the kids, then we look at our budget, which everybody, start now, ladies, anybody listening, how much do you bring in, how much goes out? Mm-hmm. How much do you bring in, how much goes out? Save, save, save. Always know that you can take care of your expenses with your own earnings. Yeah. And then we get down into brass tacks of calendar. So that, I feel like there is no way through it but through that detail, because otherwise you're just hoping something will happen, and hope is not a strategy.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, man. Okay. This is so valuable. And I think one thing, particularly when you were saying how we don't always have to be perfect, and there are times where you're prioritizing something else, and you just have to be transparent and communicate that. So I think that's definitely valuable. And speaking of financial planning, I actually talked to Terry Kelson, who is a financial exec, and she gave a whole lesson on that. So I'm excited to release that as well. So Lexi, I could honestly go on and talk to you for much longer, but I will end off with 2 questions. So one, what is a passion or hobby that you have that's just completely unrelated to your work?
So unrelated to my work, it all feels also related, but I love poetry. I would love to say I'm writing poetry, but I'm not. I'm really reading more of it. Okay. So I keep this book near me. I'm sharing it with you, called The Soul of the World, a modern book of hours. It's edited by Phil Cousineau, and it's no longer in print, but you can get it used. I checked. And this is every 3 hours, it has a different poem. So I just keep it, and as these days in particular are pretty hard, I'll just step outside, since we're, again, all working from home, and read a poem, look outside, take a couple deep breaths. I find that helps.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. And then as a last question, I'm interested, what is a fun or weird talent that you have that no one else really knows about? And so I'll go first. So what I've been doing is I can throw blueberries into my mouth. Okay, so I'm going to do it for you right now.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay, so here's a blueberry.
Yeah.
All right. There we go.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, well, Carly, I wouldn't have thought about this particular one. It's not a talent, but maybe it's just, I'll just take some license with your questions, which is, I spent the better part of my 4th grade trying to get in the Guinness Book of World Records for grape throwing into my mouth.
Oh my goodness.
Ate a lot of grapes, was very good at it. I think blueberries are harder because they're smaller, but you are a Stanford student. It was amazing at soccer, so I would expect nothing less.
Oh my God.
That's not a particularly strong talent, but you just inspired me. I'm going to try it.
I love that. That's so funny. Yeah, in high school or maybe middle school. But me and a friend, we would throw grapes during lunch, and and I would just get so good at it. We'd go farther and farther, and I'd be like, "Oh, this is great." So I love that. Yeah. That's great. Well, Lexi, thank you so much for coming on the show and just sharing any advice and insight you have, and just your experience and your story. So I really appreciate it, and I'm so excited for others to learn from you as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Carly. Thank you for everybody who's listening, and good for you for doing this. This is important stuff. Yeah. So I was happy to be asked. Have a great day.
Thank you.